Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In our last video, we built this beautiful login screen for our Flutter application. In this video, we are going to add the actual logging with Google functionality to our application. And this is what this functionality looks like. When we click on the login with Google button, we see this menu which shows us various email IDs with which we can log in to this Flutter application. When I choose a particular email ID, my app is redirected to its home screen with a logout button. And when I click on logout, I am logged out of this application. So let's go ahead and try to build this functionality within our Flutter application. So let's get started by checking the current state of our application. We have this beautiful, colorful login screen with our app title and a large login with Google button. And what happens when I click this button? Well, it just simply prints I was tapped, because this function is getting invoked when we tap this button. And just before moving forward, let me change the title of my app to something like Fluttergram, which is much more catchy. All right, so let's get started with adding the login with Google functionality. Well, the first thing that we need to do here is we need to get the Google sign-in plugin. We can install it by using the following command, flutter pub add Google sign-in. So let me copy this and let me head back to my terminal and let me simply print this command and hit enter. So this will fetch all the necessary libraries that we need to actually have the Google sign-in functionality in our app. After this command has run, let me simply say flutter pub get, and now I am ready to be able to use the Google sign-in plugin within my Flutter application. So within the home.dart file, I migrate straight to the top of my home component, and here I will introduce a new variable which we will call GSI, which stands for Google sign-in, and we will set it equal to Google sign-in. Next, let us go to our gesture detector, and instead of printing I was tabbed, let us instead call a function on the GSI variable, gsi.signin. The sign-in function is used to make users sign in to our application. If we go ahead and save this file and wait for a hot reload, we can go ahead and click on login with Google and see what happens here. So we can see that we see this pop-up which has one of our already logged in Google IDs, as well as we can add another account. So let's try to see what happens when we click on this account right here. But before that, let me just open the debug console just in case we get any errors. Let me select this email ID and let's see what happens. All right, so we get an error, unhandled exception, platform exception, sign in failed, and the API exception 10 and null. So why does this error occur in the first place? Well, this error occurs when we are running our app in debug mode and we have not added the SHA fingerprints in our Firebase config. So if you remember, when we were creating our Firebase config for this Android application, there was an SHA field there which we had purposefully left empty. So to fix this, what we are going to do now is we are first going to generate our SHA fingerprints, and then we are going to add them to our Firebase config for this Android application, and then we are going to update the Firebase config within this Flutter project, and everything should work fine as expected. So how do we go about actually generating our SHA fingerprints? Well, first of all, we need to migrate to our Android directory within the Flutter project, which is this directory. So let me go to terminal and let me say cd android. Now within this directory, I will give a very simple gradlew command, which is .forward/gradlew signing report, and hit enter. So it will take just a couple of seconds and it will generate the required SHA fingerprints for us. Alright, so we can see that these fingerprints have been generated. Let me pick the one which says debug. Alright, this one. So we will need both SHA1 and SHA256. Let me copy the SHA1, and once you have copied it, you need to migrate to console.firebase.google.com. This is our Firebase project related to this Flutter application. So let us go inside this, and within here let's click on Android and let's click on the settings here. Alright, so on these project settings within the general tab we can see your apps. Now here I have this option of adding fingerprint. So let me go ahead and click on add fingerprint, and I can paste the fingerprint that I just copied right here. So it figures out that this is a SHA1. Let me save this, and let me in the meantime get the other fingerprint here as well. Let me copy this and let me add that fingerprint here as well, and let me save this file. Alright, so for next steps we have to download the Google services.json file once again, and we have to replace the already existing Google services.json file within our project. So let me go ahead and download this. And I'll save this. Let me go ahead and open my downloads folder. And I will grab this file from here and drag it here to replace the already existing file. So it asks me, do I want to replace the already existing file? Yes, I do. And now after this step, I need to actually build my application all over again. So let me stop this and let me go ahead and run it again. This will take a couple of seconds and I'll see you at the other end of it. Alright, so our app has relaunched and we are going to attempt to log in one more time. So let me select this email ID and see what happens. Well, that's really sad. We get another error right here. So the thing to notice here is that the old error is gone, but this is a new error. The error code this time is 12500. But well, we know the solution for this as well. So just hold tight. To solve this error, we again have to migrate to the same page where we added the SHA fingerprints. And here we have this drop down which asks us to configure the support email. So let us go ahead and choose the email that we want to configure for support. For now, let me choose this email ID, and that's it. Let's go ahead and try to log in again within this application and see what happens. We see this form, and let me try to log in with this email ID. And we don't actually see any errors this time around. So that's a really good thing. So what that means at this point of time, that all the configurations for the Google login are correct from the Firebase end. Now we have to write some custom logic to make something happen when the user actually tries to log in our application. As of now, if you see our code for the home.dart file, we just say gsi.login, but we don't do anything special when the user actually logs in. So let us go ahead and write that code. Alright, so now to make something happen when the user has logged in, we need to first recognize when the user has logged in. Now for this very purpose, the Google Sign-in plugin provides us with a stream which is named onCurrentUserChange stream. This stream provides us with some data whenever the current user who has logged in using the Google Sign-in plugin gets changed. On this stream, we can attach listeners, which are nothing but functions which do something when they receive some data on a stream. So if all of this sounds very confusing, just hold tight and this will be clear in just a moment when we write some code related to it. Alright, so I am going to come within the init state method of my home widget, and here I am going to say gsi dot on current user changed dot listen. So this on current user changed is actually the stream that I was talking to you about before. So you can see in the description, subscribe to this stream to be notified when the current user changes. And how do we subscribe to a stream? We subscribe to a stream by using the listen method. Now there will be some data flowing within this stream which we can gather within the variable, or we can receive within the variable account. For first things, let me check if account is null or not. So if account is not equal to null, which means that we did receive some data within the account variable, or you can say in other terms that the user was able to log in, we can get started with printing the details of the account firstly. So let me say print account and account.toString. Let me save this and let us try this out. I can head on over to my debug console, clear everything and try to log in with Google. Alright, and we can see that some data did get printed here, and yes, we can see the display name, we can see the email ID, we can see the ID, we can see the photo URL. Alright, so this means that we were able to successfully log in within this application using Google with this email ID. Now let us go ahead and set the authentication state to true in case the user was able to log in. So here let me say set state and let me set auth to be equal to true. Now let me also handle the else case, in which case we are going to simply say set state auth is equal to false. Now in what case will you receive a value of account to be null? Well, in the case we decide to log out from our Flutter application, we will receive the value of account to be equal to null. Let us restart our application at this point of time and see what happens. So if I go ahead and click on login with Google, I can see that I have been logged in by setting the value of auth to be equal to true. And what do I exactly display on the screen when auth is equal to true? I simply display the text home screen. Let us now try to introduce a logout button here and add functionality for logging out from our application as well. To do that, I am going to replace this text with another function similar to the build unauth screen. Let's call this function build auth screen. Let me copy this and let me define the function here as well. And this is going to return us a scaffold, and this scaffold would have a body containing a container. Within the container, everything would be center aligned, alignment dot center. This container would have just one child. This child is going to be an elevated button. This elevated button would also have a child, which would be some text, should be logout, and apart from that we would have an onPressed event handler, which would simply sign the user out. Alright, so let's try this out. Okay, so we can see our new improved screen with the logout button. So let's try to see what happens when we click on logout. Okay, so we are redirected to our login screen. Let's try to log in again and see what happens now. So this time around we are shown the option to choose the login email ID. So let me choose this email ID, and we can see that these are the account details and we have been logged in. Well, this is cool, isn't it? Now there is just one more caveat to this. Suppose I am in a logged in state, but what happens if I restart my application? Well, we can see that upon application restart, I am not in a logged in state, whereas I had previously for sure logged in into this Flutter application. So what can be done to handle this situation? Well, the Google sign-in plugin provides functionality to handle that scenario as well. Let me go to the init state method and say gsi.signin silently. This method returns me a future which contains the Google sign-in account. So when this future is resolved, let me say then, and let me name this value as account, and we essentially have to do the exact same things that we were doing here. So let me first refactor this part of the application into a separate method so that we follow the dry principle of don't repeat yourself. Let me call this method handle sign in, and this will take a variable of the type Google sign in account. Okay, looks like it did not get copied. Let me paste it here. Yes. And now after we sign in silently, we simply have to call the handle sign in method with the variable account. Let us see what happens now when we restart our application. All right, so we see that we are actually logged in within our Flutter application. There's a small mistake here. We forgot to add the handle sign in method for the on user change stream listener as well. So let us quickly add that as well. All right. So now let's try to log out from our Flutter application, and we are redirected to the login screen. And when we try to log in again, we are redirected to the logout screen. Once again, if I restart my application, I land back within the login screen as well. All right, so that is it for this video, guys. I hope you had a lot of learning in this small video. We learned about the Google Sign-in plugin. We learned how to configure our Firebase configurations to make the plugin work seamlessly for us. We also added the login functionality, the logout functionality, as well as the silent login for our Flutter application. In our future videos, we are going to continue to build the home screen of our Flutter application. So if you like the content of the video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you like the content of my channel, please click subscribe. You can hit the bell icon to never miss any new updates. And like always, thanks a lot for watching. I see you very soon with a brand new tutorial.